So, hi everyone, and welcome to Sign for Malaysia's first online interview. I'm so pleased to be joined by Jerick Hartono, the 19-year-old founder of Volume Up. Volume Up is a nonprofit based in Indonesia and founded in 2017. Volume Up seeks to bridge the divide between the deaf and the hearing communities through awareness and advocacy. Jerick himself is partially deaf and has continued his fantastic work even as a student in the University of Michigan. So Jerick, would you like to just tell us a bit about yourself and Volume Up?
Yeah, so as Serena said, I am the founder of Volume Up, and right now I'm a university student at the University of Michigan studying chemistry and also learning some things about like American Sign Language and the deaf community along the side. So yeah, that's pretty much about me and Volume Up, the nonprofit that I founded back in 2017. So since then, we have a lot of projects, and we're still continuing. University of Michigan is a pretty great place for entrepreneurship and like their support regarding nonprofit and social work. So that's pretty great as well.
Awesome. Okay, so just to dive right in, could you
Yes.
talk a bit about how your personal journey of hearing loss factored in the founding of Volume Up?
Okay, so I'm actually like hard of hearing. So basically, I would say that initially, what I find with a lot of hard of hearing people that we don't really think about our deaf side. So that's what my personal experience. Initially, I wasn't very aware of what was going on in the deaf community here. But then, as I grew older, I started to get curious. So I reached out to some prominent figures within the Indonesian deaf community. So I reached out to a couple of famous advocates and people like that, and I try to ask what if there's any problems within the deaf community or if there's any help they need. And what I've really gotten from a lot of people that there's not enough awareness of the Indonesian Sign Language, which actually is called BISINDO for short, BISINDO. So it stands for Bahasa Isyarat Indonesia, which basically translates to Indonesian Sign Language. And not only that, I also found out there's quite a disconnect between the deaf and hearing community. So, as someone who identify as hard of hearing, I see myself as the embodiment of the bridge between the deaf and hearing world. So definitely that's how hearing loss factor in the founding of Volume Up, because from that I got inspired to start my own nonprofit to help basically reach the goal of bridging the deaf and hearing world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, likewise with myself. It's like it's such a unique position to be in, kind of in between the two worlds. And
Yes.
just using that to create that empathy, and as you said, be this kind of bridge is just a really nice role.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, could you talk to us a bit about Volume Up's recent projects or some of the most exciting projects you guys are involved in? I know you're really involved in like technology and advancing the deaf community through that.
Yeah, so basically with technology, that's definitely true. What our most exciting and kind of like our flagship project was basically to make a sign language application to teach the Indonesian Sign Language. So we've done that. We've kind of made it about like halfway complete. We're trying to develop on that as well this summer. Basically, just to give a brief overview of that project, right now we call it Chak Asal, which basically stands for Jakarta Sign Language. How it worked it basically is we would say it's more of like an online dictionary as of right now. So we would kind of pick like level 1, 2, and 3, and then within each level there are different categories based on its difficulty, and then picking category will show up several words, and picking a word will show up a video of like either me or several other advocates within the deaf community teaching the sign language. So that's definitely our most exciting project. Recently, we've also started a couple other projects. Basically, one of our most recent project is opening up an English curriculum to help teach the deaf community, because I think that it's definitely very good to have some vocational training as well to the deaf community to help them kind of also interact with the hearing world, which is basically one of our goals as well. So definitely we've got that started. We also had several other projects relating to the COVID-19 situation. So for example, with given like relief packages to some of the deaf schools in Indonesia. And we've also had some people who like try to make masks as well. You know, those masks, the one with like the screen to basically be able to read lips. Yes. I also find it really difficult to hear other people when they use like a normal mask. So I think definitely quite interesting and helpful to the deaf community in general if they could use that as well. So yeah, those are our most recent and exciting projects.
That's really cool. Yeah. And it's interesting that you talked about bringing the English curriculum into the deaf world in Indonesia, because I was just about to ask you about some deaf issues specifically in Indonesia, because I know in Malaysia over here, yeah, similar problem. It's very hard for the deaf community to pick up English and the local language, which is Bahasa Melayu. And that's so crucial because those languages are needed to enroll in college. So that then creates this huge disconnect in terms of how many deaf people are able to go into higher education. And that just leads to bounties of social inequality later on in life. So since you touched on that, I was just wondering if you could talk about some other deaf issues, specifically in Indonesia.
Sure. So basically, I definitely agree with you how like it creates a disconnect. One thing that I'm not sure if this is specific to Indonesia, but we have basically these two languages. They call it CB and Bisindo. So the difference is that, yeah, so CB actually, I asked some of the dev advocates to like clarify me on this. Basically, CB is more of a language system. It's not a language, sorry, it's like a sign system. It's not a language, whereas Indo is the official like sign language of Indonesia. So you know, like sign system, I'm guessing what they mean is basically it's not there's no like sentence structure and things like that. It's basically just symbols. Yeah, so that's one of the discrepancies between the languages in the deaf community here. So that's specific to Indonesia, I think. And a lot of the deaf advocates basically they're trying to raise awareness of this Indo and not CB to try to get people to learn this Indo more. And not these that's one of the small things I see that one of the big things, sorry, that I see that happens within the deaf community here. Another thing is that some deaf schools that I've been to, basically they do not encourage learning sign language, which is really weird. Basically, they want to kind of encourage voice training. So it's really unique to like one school that I visited. I think it's called SLB. No, not SLB. Sorry. Yeah, it's I visited like quite a long ago, so I kind of forgot the name. But basically, I've talked to them, and all the students surprisingly do not learn sign language. So I was very surprised. And I asked the head of the school on how they like talk. So they use signs. I think they use kind of like they don't have the language. They use signs for like describing like showering. Like they would just do like that for showering, like eating. They would just do that. But other than that, they try to do vocal cords training. So I'm not really sure how it works, but they would kind of touch on like your throat and then try to feel the vibrations to like match words and things like that. So that's definitely something that I find that's very different in some schools. It might be specific to Indonesia, but I'm not sure. But yeah, that's definitely an issue that we're seeking to address as well, to kind of advocate that there's nothing wrong with learning sign language, because I think the reason why the school told me that why they want to do voice trainings to basically better integrate with the hearing world, because obviously the amount of people in the hearing world who could speak sign language is not a lot. But yeah, I would say that not a bad thing to learn sign language. You know, at least you could learn both. I would say that would maybe even help you better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And I think like for me, in Malaysia, I haven't really heard of schools almost forcing deaf students to actually have vocal training as opposed to traditional sign language learning. But I feel like that's so symptomatic of the wider problem, where people think that if you teach your child sign language, that's going to prevent them from picking up a spoken language. But that's totally not true. And actually, it's shown that the wider your vocabulary in sign language is, the better your vocabulary will be in spoken languages. So yeah, like, it's definitely a big problem where, especially I think hearing parents, they try to prevent their deaf child from learning sign language, and in doing so, they're actually depriving their child of a language, which can cause a lot
Yeah.
of harm. Yeah, and
Yeah, I totally agree.
right. And it's so interesting that you talked about CB versus BIS Indo. There's a similar problem here in Malaysia, actually. And it's that divide between having a native sign language, which is BIM, Bahasa Isyarat Malaysia, versus what they call a manually coded language, which is KTBM. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and when you talked about it lacking complete like grammatical structure, like that really struck a chord because just to illustrate the difference, in KTBM, okay, so in BIM, butterfly would look something like this. That's butterfly.
Yep.
And then in KTBM, it's like butter, so the food, and then fly, the verb.
Oh
So
wow.
exactly, yeah, and it makes like learning so much harder for the students and the teachers, and then it also makes it so hard to learn Malay and English.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
and
like they kind of like break it down between like the syntax and like the word, not like the whole word, right?
exactly, yeah, and it just confuses everyone. But it's because the government hasn't enforced the learning of the native sign language enough in schools, and yeah, it's a big problem here as well.
That's actually the same problem, I think. Like from one CB is actually also like an MC language, from what I've heard from the deaf activist. But I think that what you said, that how like the government does not enforce the native sign language, it's definitely very prevalent here too. Like that's a problem here as well. I think Malaysia and Indonesia seem to have like the deaf same problem within the deaf community, I think.
Yeah, and I think that invisibility is felt like in deaf communities around the world almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I often get like questions, and I wonder myself, like, why is it that the government doesn't seem to, I wouldn't say care so much, but why is it that the awareness isn't there? So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, at least in Indonesia.
Well, I'm not that sure about it because I'm not very like involved within like the legal part of deaf community, but I think I would say that there's not just not a lot kind of enough advocates in
Mhm.
Indonesia that would like kind of like have influence over, legal power and things like that. Yeah, and I don't think there's a lot of, how like in America they have like the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. I don't think I'm not sure if there's something similar in here. I would like I'm obviously going to try to find out after this. But yeah, I definitely think that there should be some more advocacy here within the government sphere.